Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is the ASX and Sectors weekly chart analysis for the week ending 5th of June 2026. First chart is the S&P ASX 200 index. This is the XJO, the parent index of the Australian Stock Exchange. Put some levels in. Highs of the current range come through here, and the lows of the range in there. There's a little intermediate level through here. The market's been trading sideways or roughly sideways for a number of weeks now. The uncertainty continues to a large degree. The market would probably like to go higher, but there is uncertainty across the markets at the moment, and that's holding the markets back generally. This week made a half-hearted attempt to push higher earlier in the week, but the market then faded lower later in the week under its own weight. To look likely to go higher at one stage earlier this week. However, the trading on overseas markets continued to show uncertainty, and that held this market back. Volume was below the average. It reduced considerably, and that's just showing you that people aren't prepared to commit to the market at the moment. They're waiting to see what's going to happen. And I expect that uncertainty will continue to some degree in the coming weeks. This is the ASX mid-cap sector. It continues to trade sideways. Breakdown line above. Highs of the range. Lows of the range. You can see the market's just trading sideways in the shadow of this breakdown level through here. The market traded inside the previous bar's range all week this week in consolidation mode. This is another market. You can clearly see there's uncertainty in the market. It's reluctant to move lower at this point in time, but there's not enough positive sentiment to move higher. And in response, the market's trading sideways, just waiting to see what will happen. The small ordinaries sector, and it's also trading sideways to a large degree. The breakdown line above is up here, lows of the range. You can see the market's trading sideways with a little bit more volatility than the mid-caps, but sideways all the same. The market traded inside the range of the previous bar for most of the week. Volume reduced as price came back, so there's no active sell-off in the market here. The market's just trading sideways. Traders aren't committing to their positions. They're waiting to see what's going to happen. This is the financial sector, and the market's trading inside the range of this widespread down bar where the market broke down from more recently. It's attempting to consolidate here. It looked more positive initially, but since then the market's been just fading lower, still within the range of that down bar, but not looking quite so positive any longer. Lows of the range through there. Here was the highs of the initial range, and here's the overall highs of the range up here, where supply was drawn out. Both times that level was challenged. There was a period of consolidation in response to that supply being drawn out each time. This bar was formed when the RBA announced a change to the interest rate target. Prices come back adjacent to where the market was consolidating previously. And now the market's attempting to consolidate again at this level. It's looking a little uncertain, as is the whole market to a large degree, but it's holding on within the range of that down bar. And you'll note that this week's bar, the spread narrowed somewhat and volume reduced slightly. So the market's attempting to consolidate here. This is the ASX metals and mining subsector. It's been looking more positive recently, although with the strength of the US dollar on Friday caused the market to sell back down a little. Here's the highs of this range, just trading adjacent to this And despite the fact the market sold back down this week, volume reduced considerably. So it wasn't really an active sell-off. It was just responding to the lower commodity prices to a large degree. And you can see this market is looking relatively strong, certainly stronger than some of the other markets we've just looked at. I expect there'll be an attempt to consolidate next week, something like that, at least earlier in the week, and then it will respond depending on how much supply is drawn out. The ASX gold sector, got the lows of the range down here. There's intermediate lows in there, intermediate highs, breakdown line, and the highs of the range through there. The market's been trading sideways for the last 2 weeks inside this bar's range for the most part. You'll note the volume dropped considerably this week. So there's certainly no commitment to the trading, but selling pressure is also relatively low. And this market's also waiting just to see what's going to happen. There's uncertainty across all these markets at the moment. That's seeing a lack of commitment to the markets while we wait to see what's going to happen. This is the ASX energy sector. It's been trading sideways for some time now, attempting to consolidate after a bit of a run more recently. Prices pushed up through here, and then again, consolidation up here, and attempted to consolidate here initially, and that's sort of broadened a little now in like this. The market traded inside the previous bar's range for almost all of the week. Volume did reduce considerably to well below the average, and this market's just trading sideways at this point of time. Looking like it's holding on fairly comfortably, but the low volume suggests there's a lack of commitment across this market as well. This is the ASX healthcare sector. It's been breaking down continuously for some time now. We've seen it attempt to consolidate a number of times previously, and the market's failed each time. And once again, we see the market attempting to consolidate sideways. But we've seen this before, and the market's failed each time. I expect we're going to need to see a considerable amount of buying support into this market prior to any attempt to buy it and ride prices higher. At this stage, the market continues to grind lower, and there's been no significant attempt to support the market. This is the ASX industrial sector, and it's also trading sideways to a large degree. Volume reduced this week to below the average. The breakdown line above is a little zone through there like that. You can see the market did find some support back here, pushed up to the breakdown level, which is also the highs of this range through there. You can see the market's really been trading sideways. Just below the breakdown line, it's looking a little more positive. It's looking like it would like to push higher, but the uncertainty is holding it back. And there's also expected to be resistance up here adjacent to this congestion to the left. So the market can sit down here, absorb supply, and that will open the door for a push higher at some point in the future. And the market can wait to see if overseas events ease to some degree and the uncertainty clears on overseas markets. This is the ASX consumer staples sector. This is a defensive sector, which saw some buying support emerge again this week in response to the uncertainty we've seen. The market overshot its lows down here, recovered pretty quickly, consolidated last week, spent a little more time in consolidation mode this week before pushing higher. That suggests there was some buying in this market and confirms the uncertainty we've seen more recently. The highs of the range come through here. This is where the market saw buying support previously. And the fact that prices pushed above this level does suggest there was some buying in this market this week, and that saw prices rise and push above the highs of the previous range. This is the ASX discretionary sector. It's been quite subdued more recently. That's the little range it's been trading in. There's been an intermediate level forming through here. The market pulled back slightly this week within the range of the previous up bar with a narrow spread and average volume. So this was consolidation. The breakdown line is way up here, so there's a heap of room for the market to move. If the uncertainty would ease, it could easily push into that range. The market, however, at this point in time is just trading sideways in consolidation and potential accumulation mode, but we'll see about that. The narrow spread suggests there was buying support in the market this week. We'll see if that continues into next week. This is the ASX properties sector. And it's also been trading sideways more recently with maybe a pressing nature towards the upside. Breakdown line above, secondary breakdown line up there. Expected to be some resistance from that little zone of congestion there, and the same up here if the market gets up here. Breakdown line above goes through there, and the market is consolidating sideways with just a pressing nature towards the upside. Each time there's a down bar in response, the volumes remain relatively modest. This week reduced back to average, so there was some buying support in the market. Otherwise, the increased volume to the downside would have seen a more widespread bar. So we'll see how that plays out next week. Just back to the parent index quickly before we wrap up. The market is trading sideways in here. That's the intermediate levels, highs of the current range and the lows of the current range. I do note there was a bit of a sell-off on overseas markets on Friday night. This market won't reopen until Tuesday, so overseas markets will trade again prior to our market opening. At this point, the market will trade lower next week in response to that weakness we saw on overseas markets on Friday night. If they continue lower, you'll probably see a pretty serious sell down in response. If they recover on the Monday, you'll probably see our market trading sideways on Tuesday. So it's likely to be sideways to down, and possibly down sharply if overseas markets continue lower at Tuesday's open. Okay, thanks for your time. Enjoy the long weekend. See ya.